My dear citizens that are watching us in front of their televisions, dear friends from across the world who have their eyes and hearts turned to Turkey, dear brothers and sisters, I would like to welcome each and every one of you with heartfelt emotions. Starting from the night of the 15th of July, Turkey experienced one of its most critical days in history. The Turkish armed forces, within the Turkish armed forces, which is of course our pride of nation, the pride of our nation and country, a group nestled in the Turkish armed forces broke the chain of command and attempted a coup. Those individuals in this group, understood to be members of the Gülenist terrorist organization, attacked its state and its nation using planes, helicopters, tanks and all kinds of weaponry. The presidential complex, the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, the premises of the offices of the Prime Minister, the Chief of Staff, the General Command, the campus of the Turkish National Intelligence Agency, the Bosphorus Bridge and various military units were heavily attacked. Thanks to the determined stance of me and my government, and of course the fact that our nation stood in the way of those coup plotters, and as a result of the effective interventions of our security forces, this attempt never succeeded. And in the face of our nation taking of its country and of its determination, the weapons, the tanks, the helicopters and the planes of the coup plotters amounted to nothing. Against terrorists in military fatigues, the people stood upright and took ownership of their homeland and their future, and our nation wrote epics of heroic bravery throughout the night. We had the young, the old, the employers, the bosses, the villagers, the urban settlers. Every member of our nation came together as one entity in the face of this attempt. Our citizens that said no to this saw tens of people being shot and being martyrized in front of their eyes. And of course they saw numerous people getting wounded and injured. And they tried to save those people under those dire circumstances, and until the early hours of the morning they continued their resistance. And thanks to God, everyone that feels themselves to be a member of this homeland and of this nation stood in the face of this attempted coup. Our nation had the sorrow of not being able to save Menderes and his friends and colleagues in the aftermath of the coup in 1960. In the aftermath of the coup in 1980, young people were executed, abiding by the idea of one from the right and one from the left, and those sufferings are still fresh in our memory. And 15th of July 2016 is a turning point when the nation put an end to this ill fate. For the first time in the history of our country, an armed coup attempt was crippled by the nation itself. And Turkey actually proved its allegiance to democracy and to the rule of law by paying a very high price, which is the lives of its citizens, as a result of the fire and shootings of the coup plotters. 246 innocent citizens, police officers and military personnel lost their lives. 1,536 innocent citizens were also wounded. On this occasion, I would like to honor the memory of the fallen, and I would like to wish speedy recovery to the wounded. I would like to convey my condolences to the relatives and families of those that lost their lives. I want to be very clear. Of course, it's no time to be dwelling on this political party or that other political party. As the president of this nation, I am proud of my country, of my people, and I do believe that with the nation we will overcome all of these obstacles, and this will go down in the history of democracy. It will be a heroic act of bravery from the hand of the Turkish nation. My beloved citizens, starting from the first moment the coup attempt became clear, the President, myself, the Prime Minister, ministers, our security forces, and the commanders of the armed forces that stood against the coup plotters, we all came together and worked in very close collaboration. Despite all dangers and all threats, I headed out to Istanbul immediately, and with my nation, of course, I stood against the coup plotters. In the face of the determination and the will of my nation, the attempt was completely stopped before the night or the evening of the following day. And today, on the 20th of July, we had the meeting of the National Security Council, which was then followed by a meeting of the Council of Ministers. The members of the National Security Council came together, did intensive assessments, and we decided to recommend to the government that a state of emergency be declared as per Article 120 of our Constitution in order for us to be able to speedily and swiftly deal with all of the elements of the terrorist organization. And the Council of Ministers also abided by that recommendation and decided to declare a state of emergency for a duration of 3 months. As it is known, Article 120 of our Constitution allows for a state of emergency to be declared in the event of acts of violence that aim to abolish democracy and cripple fundamental rights and freedoms. The purpose of the declaration of the state of emergency is, in fact, to be able to take the most efficient steps in order to remove this threat as soon as possible, which is a threat to democracy, to the rule of law, and to the rights and freedoms of our citizens in our country. This practice is absolutely not against democracy, the rule of law, and freedoms. Quite on the contrary, it has the purpose of strengthening and protecting these values. The attempted coup that we experienced clearly showed who are on the side of democracy and rule of law in Turkey by risking their lives, and who are trying to impose their dictatorship. Our government, our political parties, our civil society, and the chain of command within the Turkish armed forces, and most important of all, our nation, they have always shown that their preference is on the side of democracy. On this occasion, I would like to also convey my deepest gratitude to my citizens that took to the streets, starting from the night of the 15th of July, that went to the squares and they stayed there. Regardless of their political party, political thought, or faith, all of my citizens that stood in the way of tanks are to be likened to the heroes of the Çanakkale or Gallipoli battles. They are to be likened to the lions as described by Mehmet Akif the poet. So they stood in the way of the tanks with all of their courage, and they even risked being martyrs.
Bu noktada tabii ki beraber yıllarca çalıştığımız arkadaşlarımızı da biz burada gerçekten uğurladık.
We had to part ways with friends of many years who were killed during the incidents. So A lady of 32 years of age was also killed after she was crushed by a tank. So these people are so heinous as to crash and squash a young woman by using a tank. That is how cruel these people are. So that lady is now a martyr. So they did not contend with that. They did not stop, but my nation, our nation, did not stop either. Tens were shot and wounded. Despite that, for hours, citizens did not leave their positions, and they have proven that they are indeed the descendants of the War of Independence. There were warplanes flying at low altitude, helicopters fired using heavy weaponry, and the streets were flooded by terrorists in military fatigues. Despite all of these things, my brothers and sisters did not leave, did not desert the streets, and their heroism leaves me no words to describe it. And although the attempt has now been brought to an end, my citizens have also been occupying the streets and the squares on a democracy watch so that the same thing cannot be attempted again, and their names will go down in golden letters in the memory of, in the history of democracy. So even today, starting from 4 p.m., people started flocking to Kızılay Square. Right now there are thousands of them in Kızılay Square. Tens of thousands of people are in Konya, and we will be having a video conferencing session with them, and I will be addressing those crowds.